One. Hello, and welcome to another episode of Collective Conversations. I am your host, Mike Brewer, and I am exceptionally excited about today's episode. Our guest helps property managers and multifamily pros reach their marketing goals through Sprout membership and Simply Social membership. I had to practice that because it is a mouthful. Plus, she is the host of Marketing Home, Marketing You, a podcast for multifamily. Barbara Savona is the CEO and co-founder of Sprout Marketing Multifamily. Barbara, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Mike. I feel like that was a lot, but I am the person that, when I started the business has the longest URL. It's Watch Your Business Sprout with 3 S's. So talk about a mouthful.
That is awesome. Barbara, I have to tell you, I have long been looking forward to this. And I know we had a little bit of a fit and start last week. We were supposed to record, but I've so been looking forward to this. This is the first time you and I have ever interacted. I'm going to call this in person, even though it's virtual, but I've long admired your work, your creativity, your thought process. It's just wonderful. And I'm excited about this.
Oh, thanks, Mike. I feel the same way. I'm always observing what you're up to and listening to your different episodes. And so it's an honor to be here.
Thank you. Appreciate those kind words. So let's start by, we're both a podcast and a video podcast, whatever you call that. So maybe start by telling our audience, our viewers and our listeners rather, a little bit about yourself and certainly about Sprout Marketing.
Okay. All right. So I accidentally landed in this industry almost 20 years ago, like so many people do, but I fell in love with it. And I fell in love with it for 2 reasons. Home has always had a special place in my heart. So I come from a German mom from Germany and a Mexican dad from Mexico.
Oh, wow.
English is actually my 3rd language. I learned Spanish first, German second, and English when I went to school in kindergarten. And so for me, I think early on, I don't want to go so far back, but I kind of feel like I have to. The roots of everything in our life was home. We didn't have money. We were, my parents came from other countries, just like babies, and I was early on we grew up like the 3 of us together. And so every home that we got, the next home was like a step up for us. So we started in a little trailer park. We moved to a 4-plex, then we moved to an even nicer 4-plex. And I just remember that every chapter of my life, home was in the backdrop, and it just meant so much for us, and even when we talk now, we're like, okay, that was the home on, Chauncey, and remember how great that was. And in those homes, there were all these characters in the neighborhood. And for me, with an imagination, I didn't grow up really as an American child. I grew up with seeing the poverty in Mexico and then the extreme technology in Germany, because I would visit both. So I just grew for this appreciation at how home is so different for every single person, but it just is as special. So I noticed that when we were very poor, we still had the same goals as people that had a lot of money. We wanted a happy family, a happy home. And so I bring that up because I think that's why there's like such a love for this industry. Is it just means a lot to me. And so over the years, when I landed accidentally in property management, and just it feels like it was one accident after another, from leasing to 6 months later being a property manager. And then, years later, leaving the on-site world, I just knew that home and people, whatever I was doing, it had to involve those 2. To me, that was the formula. And so that's what brought me to creating a marketing company. But really, I think about it as a community centered on people and home.
I just love that. And it, you answered a question that I had when I was looking through your LinkedIn profile in terms of working for Para Rentar. Is that how you say it?
Yeah, it's for Rent Spanish magazine.
Right. I was like, oh, that's really cool. I have to ask about that. But you answered the question already.
I know most people, it's like my little secret weapon, like especially living in Texas, everybody speaks Spanish, and so most people don't think that I do. So it was always like that helped a lot in property management, especially at my early communities. And so, so when I started Sprout, to me, I started as a property manager when I was also starting another first role for me. So first time property manager, first time being married. And it was a lot at once. And I wanted to be really good as a property manager, but I really wanted to be a good wife and have us start my successful like home life. And I always felt that there was that conflict of how do you do it all? And so years later, when I was ready to leave the on-site world and ready to leave the vendor world, and I was thinking, well, what could I do? I have this entrepreneurial spirit. Both my parents are entrepreneurs. I wanted to do something that would help the property managers that felt like they were trying to do it all and just couldn't, but they didn't want to sacrifice like being good at something. So I knew I couldn't solve all the problems. I'm not great at math and spreadsheets, but I'm like, marketing I can help with. So that's why we created Sprout, which is all about helping on-site teams market their communities and just saving them time and helping them keep up with everything that's changing, social media, just all the facets of marketing, but making it easy and making it fun.
And well, I will tell you, you hit it out of the park as it relates to making it fun. I think I'm looking at an Instagram feed, but maybe you're doing some of these videos on TikTok. I'm not sure, and then repurposing them on the other platform. But your creativity is off the charts, and I'm just curious, where does that come from? Like, when in your life did you wake up and think, wow, or maybe you don't think that you're creative, but you start to express yourself in the way of a creative and an artist?
Yeah, so I guess because I'm around so many creatives in the form of like actual designers, I don't have that talent. And so I never really feel like creative the way that they are. But where I am creative is I like books, I like learning, and I like repurposing. Like I like that in life. So I told you, I think earlier, like we live in a shipping container house. So to me, it's like the ultimate repurposing. Like,
Yeah.
but I love that with anything. So, when we were little, it was like, how do we take something from a garage sale and make it feel like it's brand new? And so with books, it's like I'll hear an idea that is meant for a Forbes 500 company and be like, okay, how do we take it down to the common person and make it fun? And I think both you and I love Gary Vee. Like that's
Oh,
and he's always so interesting, but I feel like he's got that scrappy mentality that's like, okay, what can I take? What are people into? And that I'm always looking to say, like, I walk into a store and I'm like, why do I all of a sudden feel really good in this store? And I just left this other store and I was uncomfortable or I was like awkward. And so I feel like that's my little like spidey senses always going off and thinking, I want to make people comfortable in their interactions and I want to encourage people. And so maybe that's a form of creativity. So I don't know, that I think that's where it stems from.
oh, I have to unpack this a second. So when you make a remark, like you walk in a store and you are mindful enough to realize that something about that store makes you feel a certain way, versus I'll speak from my own autobiography. When I walk in a store, I'm just on a mission to get to whatever it is,
Yeah.
get out. But what 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 is it that gives you the sort of presence in a moment where you can actually realize that this store or this experience is making you feel a certain way? I'm just curious.
I don't know. I don't know. Maybe if it's a little bit of a man versus woman thing. I don't want to say that. I
I
also,
could.
I mean, maybe a little. My husband would be like, yeah, I did not notice what music was playing and I don't care what the sales girl said to me. uh, I don't know. I grew up in an environment where I was very sensitive to the surroundings always, to my, like, are my parents in a good mood? What's going on? How's everybody feeling? That was a thing. But, for me, like, I think because I didn't fit in, I never 100% fit in. So like when I was in Mexico, I was the blonde girl with like, I was awkward. I didn't fit there. Right. But I mean, I love that culture and I love that culture. In Germany, I 100% didn't fit in. So when I got here in the States, like I never fit in. I wasn't a popular girl. I wasn't the cool girl, but I always like noticed how certain things made me feel. Like if somebody took an interest in me just personally, I was like, man, that like stuck with me. And I then wanted to make somebody feel that way. So like when I walk in a store, it's like to me, the difference between somebody can say like, hey, hun, and I can feel so warm. And you can have somebody else that gives you that same expression and you feel really snobby and like they're being talked down to. So it's everything from like the people to the temperature. Is it too cold? Am I wanting to get out of here? Is it overwhelming? Like when I walk in, is it easy to find things? Is it, is there a flow? Do I want to stay and hang out? And not all places are meant to stay and hang out. Like some businesses you want in and out, but that's part of design too. And I think that is the fascinating part, is when it's created really well and you can have that experience, and it can be just, it can make the difference of a successful business to a business that fails.
So thank you for taking the time to walk through that. I have to imagine, if we sort of play off of your lead in the way of home and in sort of those four walls that one lives in, and your deep and intimate connection with that over your lifetime, I have to imagine that influences your business in the way of the creative, in the way of you're helping the property managers, just kind of like you've unpacked it. How do you generate that emotional connection in the multifamily space for an operator when you're doing that work for them?
I'll tell you, it's really challenging because we're not talking about home for one person. We're talking about home for 300 to 400 people, and budgets are involved in money. And honestly, it's not always super profitable immediately to do that.
Right.
And I think that's what is hard with our industry. I love working with operators that are thinking about the long term. What do they want to do? Even if they're not going to hold an asset forever, but what are they trying to create? And when I have the opportunity to work with a developer from conception all the way till they sell the asset, those are some of our most successful projects because we're thinking through that journey the whole way. But if it's somebody that just wants to turn and, burn, like that's usually, we're just not compatible. Not that there's not space for it. It's just not, it's not the work I do. That's not who I'm there for. And then the other challenge is, okay, taking it to the property manager that feels burnt out and feels a little bit fried. And I think that's been the hardest thing to see the last 2 years is we work with a lot of managers that came in with so much gusto and they're just feeling a little run down. So I'm constantly trying, and our team too, to remind them like, just like one little thing can make your day better. Something so small can impact your resident that can then have this trickle effect. But I'll tell you, that is probably, if I could figure that out 100%, I mean, that would be my ultimate goal. It is a challenge to evoke those same feelings that, that I've got for somebody that is, just bombarded. Not that they don't want to, but it's just a lot to juggle.
I hear you loud and clear. Let's unpack that a little bit. I know I certainly believe in my heart of hearts that COVID has impacted our industry in a big way.
Yeah.
But it just feels heavy, right? The world feels heavy, and certainly that is impacting our on-site teams. And what are your thoughts about that topic?
Yeah, I think that it's, that I think people are stepping back, that we were in this very fearful at the beginning. Then it was like all hands on deck, do what we can do. But I feel for the on-site teams, they are stepping back and saying, how was I really treated during this time by my upper management? I've endured a lot. I put myself on the line. Am I getting that back? And I think the amount of turnover and the difficulty in getting people to, they're saying the great resignation. I don't think that this is because people just don't want to work. I think it's because people don't feel appreciated. And I think, it's funny. It's like I'm in marketing and I think people think of me, oh, flyers and events. My real passion here is the people. And as a property manager for many years, I feel like sometimes I'm on the opposite side of the boardroom saying like, yeah, you want your manager to do, you want her to manage your multi-million-dollar asset. You want her to run a maintenance team. You want him or her to host this event. So they're party planners, they're counselors, and you wanted to do it with a smile amidst a pandemic. And you also don't want to give them a raise when they're short-staffed. I feel like that's the conversation that needs to happen is, we are, if we are about home, it's not just home for our residents. It's like, where can our people go home to? Like, how do they feel at the end of the day? So I just think that, I think the negativity is there. I'm in a lot of these Facebook groups, and I'm not trying to I'm not trying to get at all political. I have no interest in any of that. Mine is, I would love to just be the cheerleader and the advocate for the on-site teams and to say, hey, you guys have options. And when you're really good, especially in an economy like this, you have options. And so step back and make sure that you're working for a company that is at least aligned with your core life values. And if not, there are companies like that out there.
Oh, it is so true. It's the opportunities that are presenting themselves in the way of the multifamily space are just endless,
Yeah.
and it's just a matter. I want to segue that into something that you posted. I think it was today or yesterday, because I certainly do think that there is a piece of this equation where the business itself is there to serve the people that serve it, meaning the team member. And if we do that well, then the consumer gets served well, the business partner gets served well, and certainly investors reap a windfall. But the other side of that equation is that you have your own agency, right? And
Absolutely.
sometimes people forget that. They forget that. But you posted something recently. Can you unpack that a little bit?
Yeah, I just talked about how, you bring you to every situation. And I think that it was a reflection of myself too. If I hear myself complaining a lot about things, it's like I kind of stop and pull back and say, like, well, the common denominator is Barbara here. So what can I do? If I'm not happy with this, is this the way that, am I responding in the right way? And so I think the flip side of that is to like some of those Facebook groups, people get in there and blast their management company. And I'm like, okay, I'm not an advocate of that either, So to me, it's back to what it is. It's like we all have options. And so management companies have options and we as individuals have options. And I feel like if you conduct yourself in a way that you can be proud of, you will always have options. And I think that's what's so cool is, I might not like the way somebody did something. I don't need to blast them, but I also don't need to be a part of that situation. And I can pull back and say, well, what are my options? And that's why part of the things that I train on is not just marketing your business or your apartment home, it's market yourself, make good connections, build a good reputation. If I see you blasting somebody on a Facebook group, even if you have the right, I'm going to think twice about hiring you because can I trust you? Are you loyal? Are you, do you have those qualities that are so important to me? And not just when things are good, right? Because anybody can be nice when things are good. It's, do you have those qualities all the time? So I think if you're seeing a pattern of your life where you're constantly the victim, it just might be time to look in the mirror and to say, okay, yes, life has handed me a few things that are tough. What am I contributing? What can I do? How can I make this easy?
I love that. Talk to us about, I have to imagine that you have some systems or some routines. It's certainly you identify a moment where you're sort of struggling internally or the stories you're telling yourself aren't productive. Are there actual routines that you go through, or be that when you wake up in the morning, you do XYZ before you show up for the day, or when you go to bed at night, you do XYZ so that you wake up in the morning primed? Are there things
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think, I actually wrote down, so I was a very push-pull person, like all my life. Like I'm pushing for what I want. I'm pulling people with me. I have in the last probably 5 years adopted a little bit more of a loosely structured person, which is hard for a very type A person. But I'm just not in a place in life where I want to like push and pull people or myself. I kind of want to, I have structure, but it's loose. And so for me, when things aren't going good, it's because a few of my core things are off. And so I was actually just talking with my sister about this yesterday because she's like, things don't stress you out. I'm like, Mars, they stress me out. I mean, they stress me out just like anybody else. But when that happens, I go back that I'm off somewhere. Like, so for me, and I know everybody's different, I try to get up and I read my Bible or read something else. I think about what I'm going to do. I journal. I've journaled since I was 8 and I do that every single day. I find getting it on paper gets it out of my mind and then I don't have to think about it. I go for a walk. So I'm a big walker. But back to that loosely structured, I was going to say, for years it was like, if you don't do this by 6 or 6:30, you're a failure. Now I'm like, this is my goal for the day, for the week. How I get it done, I'm okay with it being a little bit flexible. And so, yeah. And when I hear myself in a negative pattern, I mean, my business partner, I haven't mentioned her, Lauren, we've been best friends since we were 14. So I call her and she gives me the pep talk I need. And I call my sister. My husband's a great listening ear. And so just going back to those things. And I find that if I take care of like my body, my spirituality, and not like my body to be like the most amazing shape, I just mean just like to feel like, hey, I feel like if I show myself, hey, I care about you enough to do these things, then I can show up like that for everything else. And definitely have my bad days where I act not like the person I want to be. But it's, to me, that's a cue that one of those things is off.
Oh yeah, the universe has a wonderful way of reminding you, doesn't
Oh,
it? When you were speaking through that, it brought to mind heart, body, mind, and soul. And I have to believe that there is who knows what this looks like, but you seem like the perfect person to do this, or you're probably already doing this, but putting something out into the multifamily space that hits that heart, body, mind, and soul in the way of routines or disciplines that one puts into their lives. I'd love to see that at some point. It's just
Man, that would be so cool. I think the thing with our industry, and this is where, man, I'd love to hear even your thoughts on this, is, you know, how do you get people that are feeling that burnt out? Sometimes when you're in that space, it's hard to realize that these things that they're not immediate are going to be your long-term things. So, it's like the taking a lunch, taking a break, being kind to yourself, even the way you talk to yourself. And I feel like those things, it's hard sometimes to stop and do those things that you're not going to see maybe the results for a little bit. But yeah, I mean, we should definitely lead the charge in that.
oh, I'd love to do something with that. I think you're so right. I when I miss a run, I run in the morning. When I miss a run, or I read the Bible in the morning, I have all these different things that I do in the morning just to get myself primed for the day. But I'd love to key on the one you just said. Party managers sacrifice their lunch hour. I worked on site to begin my career, sacrificed my lunch hour like it was just the thing you were supposed to do. But I learned at some point in time that if I don't take that lunch hour,
Hmm.
when I show up for the second half of the day, or when I sort of just segue into the second half of the day without that reboot, it's the worst thing for your heart, body, mind, and soul.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and the property manager, really, they have so much on their plate, but honestly, they set the pace. So if you as the property manager push yourself till you're burnt out, if you never take a lunch, your team's going to think that that's what they're supposed to do. So, with our team, we're not on site, but we are all hard workers and very type A. And so we have a Slack channel, and part of what the team leads do is nudge people, hey, go take your lunch. We also instituted flex time. So 5 to 10% of everybody's time is basically, we call it on the clock, off the clock. So you're getting paid like you're on the clock. You don't have to tell anybody in your family that you get this time off. It's supposed to be sprinkled out throughout the week for you to take that extra long walk, extra long lunch. And we did that because, when I left the corporate world, and I loved working on site, and then I worked for many different vendors, well, mainly for rent media solutions in different capacities, but I wanted to build something that was structured but didn't have that corporate feel. And one thing that Lauren and I were really big on is, hey, if we want that in our life, our employees probably want that in their life too. And so that's what we've come to. And when people are like trying to think about how to reward their employees, I think sometimes we get too complicated with the gimmicks. People just need space and time, and they need to decide how they want to use it. And so for us, we started that at the beginning of COVID, which is the opposite of what most people were doing. They were pushing their teams, and we were doing the opposite. And it created something that I wasn't expecting. The teams started helping each other. So because they wanted that person to enjoy their flex time, they got so tight because they're like, okay, we don't want to interrupt Amber while she's on her flex time. How do we figure this out? And vice versa. And so I don't know. I just think that this might be a time in our industry to actually do the opposite of what we've been doing for all these years, because clearly it's not working. People are tired and they're burnt out.
I think that is so true. It's just so true. I'm curious, when you implemented flex time, did you find it difficult, or did your team members find it difficult to sort of undo those kind of baked in, imbued behaviors, so much so that now they have this free time they didn't know what to do with themselves? Did you find it a
Yeah,
little?
I mean, we literally had to like nudge people like, hey, this is your flex time. And what we said was like, try to not make flex time be running errands if possible, or doing things that you have to. Now, we have some single moms, and that flex time is saving their lunch on doctor's appointments and things like that. And again, we don't want it to become where it's like, I'm not managing how you use it. But yeah, it was difficult a little bit. But I think that when we've done our reviews and just talked to the team, I mean, out of anything that we do, that's what people here appreciate the most, is that we're not just saying that we value your off time. I mean, it's like we really, I need it. So I know that you need it. And then ultimately it's going to produce better work. So when you're thinking financials, at first it might seem like but really the benefit that you get in return, you're going to get that ROI back, even if you don't think so.
Oh, I have to believe that you do, in the sense that when one has the opportunity to recharge their batteries, when they come back to it, right? They're
Yeah.
doing it with an amped up energy.
100%. And they feel like, they feel like their employer actually cares about them as a person. And, back to that, why we're have a hard time hiring people or finding people that want to work is because I think people have been shown that sometimes their boss doesn't really care about them. They say they do. They have a core value on the wall, which I think like either you live it or don't put it on the wall, right? So yeah, I mean, I get fired up about this just because I've seen how it's worked so well for our team. And I would encourage that instead of, yes, money is important, and especially with how things are, but talking to your team, I guarantee you time is important. You might have a manager that would just love to be able to pick up their kids from school one day a week. Like, how cool would that be that they
Yeah.
get to do that? So ask and be okay to get personal and find out, what is important to you. And let's see how we can make both of those things work.
I agree. It's interesting. I just had this conversation a couple of days ago with one of my team members, and I say it jokingly, but I'm half-heartedly serious about it. I have team members that take off PTO and call it a mental health day. It doesn't matter what the
Right,
reason is,
right.
but they check in on email, right? And
Right.
they stay in and they answer email when they're out. And I have almost gone to the extent of like shutting down their access, right?
You're like, no, you will rest.
Yeah, because it's, the whole intent of taking the day off is to get yourself recharged, but then you're checking in, and I have to believe that plants anxiety in their
Of
minds,
course. Of course. Yeah.
or the fear of missing out sort of thing.
100%. Yeah.
But it's important that people take care of themselves. So, um, how do we? I want I want people to know where they can find you, not just for your marketing sort of, but also I read on your LinkedIn page the motivational speaking, the things you, how do people tap into that part of your offering as an individual?
Yeah, so I don't do as much public speaking as I used to, but I do a lot of training and a lot of video kind of things now. And so anybody, they can DM me or they can message me on LinkedIn. I work with people that really want to do the work and I get excited about it. And I still do things for individual management companies here and there, but I feel like now I'm able to reach a lot more. So people think of our membership as marketing, but there's so much training in there. And it's a lot of training about, when I say like automation, it's not automation so you can go do more work. It's automation so that you can go have a life. So I think it's just a different kind of a company when someone becomes a member with us, they're kind of getting that philosophy in everything we do. We're like, can this be simple? Okay, let's make it simple. And I do a lot of training inside of the membership that I don't really do anywhere else because to me those that are members, they want to do really good in there. They're wanting to do the work. And so I think that's really where I spend the most amount of time. But Instagram too. Like I mean I get a lot of DMs and I end up becoming friends with people the same way that you and I have, and a lot that are, hey, I just started leasing. What do I do? And so I try to give as much, as I can there as well.
Is that so the differentiation between Sprout membership and Simply Social membership, it's the Simply Social membership that has the training offering? Is that
No, the Sprout membership is our all-inclusive membership. And so Simply
okay?
Social is a piece of it. It gives people just the social media access. So basically, if a site is posting their own social media, we give them all pre-written caption, templates, graphics, so that when you're sitting down to write something, it's already written and you just make it your own, like a Mad Lib style. And the
Uh,
whole reason behind that is we create posts for apartments specific to drive results. So it's engagement, it's, sales, it's marketing. But inside of the membership with Sprout, not only do they get the flyers and things like that, they get the training on, okay, time management. I mean, I partnered with a therapist that was in multifamily, and we have coaching inside of there on dealing with anxiety, dealing with PTSD, dealing with depression. We have a coach in there that he was our business coach. How do you hire right? And how do you create a marketing platform? Because really that's what you're doing when you're hiring, is you are marketing yourself as the company. And so, sometimes I think it falls under the umbrella of, oh, it's just marketing, but it's really not. It's more like the hacks of property management.
that makes sense. It's I think you hit on something that is super important in terms of really telling the story, right?
Yeah.
Telling the story of your organization and doing that in a way that is full of impact for that person that might come to work for you. And it's especially important in today's hiring environment that you have that, uh, call it a safe space or a psychologically safe space where people can come and be themselves fully and wholly, right?
Mhm.
It's I often talk about it like when a person shows up at your business, a team member, they don't take all their problems and put them on a nice little coat hanger and leave it at the door, right? It comes across the threshold with them.
It's like, it's funny because we know we can't compartmentalize, but we want our employees to compartmentalize. And to a certain extent, you have to obviously come in and be professional. But if I'm having, and I think the thing is, like, people are dealing not with like small things. These are like major things. One of the forums was about when dealing with death on site. And I think we don't talk about that enough. How many times you're dealing with finding somebody that has passed away, sometimes in a horrific way. How do you deal with that?
Right.
So put that aside, and you've got families that are grandmothers that are raising their children. You've got people that are taking care of elderly parents and kids at home. I mean, these are heavy, heavy things. So when you hire the individual to say that, I just want you to come in and do the work, I mean, it's not realistic. You've got to know the person and you've got to be invested in them and in their success. If you do that, they're going to be so invested in you. And I think that's the marketing piece that comes in, because I feel like people, again, how we have options. Your company should make me want to work for you. I should know what I'm getting into and I should feel good about it. And we're going to have less turnover if we do it like that from the start.
Oh, it's so right. I think those organizations that will differentiate themselves in the
Mhm.
future will be around this idea, right, of treating people holistically.
Yes.
And when they come in and they've even to the point where you're teaching and training people how to identify the tells, right, that
Right.
someone might be having a bad day and going to the extent of, hey, look, take some time off. It's
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah. I think we get so worried about being professional. And it's like, there is definitely lines you don't want to cross as an employer and employee. But at the same time, we're all people. And so, when you have the camaraderie to see that, like, if I see in your face that you're having a bad day and I'm like, hey, like, what's going on? Are you okay? I don't need to prod and you don't have to tell me everything, but
No,
just to like have somebody there that's, cheering you on and, being your encourager, we all need that.
that's so right. So right. I want to take a little bit of a segue here or make a little bit of
Okay.
a segue. You're a reader, I'm a reader. I'm deeply interested in what you might be reading currently or a book that you gift often or that has really impacted you or influenced you in some way.
Yeah, so I think that we have this in common. I'm like obsessed with how like little tiny things make a difference. So I love the book Tiny Habits. I like Atomic Habits by James Clear. I find that I read that one like over and over because I love how just one tiny change could, set aside, make everything different. And I like environment design. To me, that's really interesting. That goes back to setting home. I also like The One Thing by Thomas Keller, The Focus. I think that one's such a good one. Right now, I'm reading a book by a woman called Susie Moore, and it's called Let It Be Easy. And it's about how as humans we complicate things and how to make scenarios just easy. And it's a super fun, simple read, but I'm enjoying it. I just shared it actually with 2 friends yesterday, and I said, this is worth a read. I like it on Audible because she has a British accent. So of course it's way more entertaining that way. Yeah. So, I mean, but I read a lot, and then I don't have the best memory though. So, I have to like reread things, or I have to write things down. Can you remember, like, cause I see that you read, I mean, I think you read more than I read. Are you a good like absorber?
So like I do a lot of marginalia,
Okay.
right?
Yeah, that helps.
And then you can't see it, but I have a sort of a box over here that is full of, I keep these 3x5 cards on
Okay.
my desk. And so anytime I circle something or highlight something in a book, I literally write it on the card, because that act of writing is what helps me imbue it in my mind. And then I put it in this box, and every now and then I flip through the box to keep key points in my head.
That is so smart. So I do it in a spreadsheet, but it's like I hate spreadsheets, so I never go back. Like I never want to look at it. I love the card thing because I feel like you're right. Writing it's that secondary like trigger, So yeah. So I mean, but I read a lot, and I read for fun too. And and then sometimes I just take off of reading for a little bit because I find that like too much input, But I listen to a lot of podcasts. I do like, because I walk a lot.
I love podcasts. Like you, I run every morning, but it's I tend to I read a lot of business books, but I tend to listen to a lot of, I maybe call it recreational reading or
Uh-huh.
whatever.
Do you like that when you run?
Yeah, right now I'm listening to War and Peace, which is like it's an, it's an
Wow.
incredible. I tried to read that book several years ago, but I just couldn't get into it. And then I decided, it was just a couple of days ago, maybe a week ago, that I was
You're
going to
gonna
tackle that beast of a book.
I'm impressed because when I'm exercising, I need like hardcore music. I don't know that I like, but I guess, I mean, that just shows how we're all so different.
Oh, I think to your point though, there are days I'd rather listen to music, and I listen to
Yeah.
music when I run, but then the long stretches, I think I listen to books more than I listen
Yeah.
to music. But today I listened to music because I was just like, I can't do War and Peace this morning.
But isn't it so cool? Like, that's what's so cool to me about the era that we live in, just that we have access to so much of that. Like, I think about, because I love to like learn about anything. Like, that's just, my husband will say, like, you like, who cares about, and I'm like, no, I'm just curious, like, how does that work? And I think like if we had lived in a different era, to not be able to just be like, okay, why did this happen? Or what, I think that is just so neat.
I have to believe too, it informs your creativity in that when you get broad, right? Somebody wrote a book called Range. I won't remember the author off the top of my head, but the central thesis to that book was that those individuals who go broad as opposed to going deep, and each have value,
Right.
but the broad thinkers, the broad readers, the broad experiential type people tend to be a little more creative in nature, because they take these bits and pieces from all these kind of disparate disciplines, and they bolt them together. They kind of see how the world bolts together, and then it expresses itself in a way that's really creative.
That makes sense because you're kind of taking from all different experiences. I like that.
It's interesting. I see it in our owner, Norman Radow. He reads very broadly, but he has this very unique way of bolting it all together and expressing it in a way that is sort of kind of, I don't, dumbed down is what comes to mind, but it's
Right.
sort of, he makes it accessible, right?
Right, right. Well, I think that's how our world works, right? So it's like we have this beautiful world that is so broad, but it's like still at the core so connected. And I mean, to me, when I think about even creativity, it's like just going for a walk, you come back like beyond the colors, and your mind just, I don't know. I feel like that, I think that's why I don't run, but I love to walk. And I feel like that is just, if you're dragging in creativity, to me, that's like, get outside.
Oh yeah, it's so true. I read Atomic Habits, and I have to believe there was something in there. I can't remember off the top of my head, but I have to believe there was something in there about being physical. The thing that I remember taking away from that book is, if I'm not mistaking it, was like even just making your bed in the morning.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
like one little quick
Just
win in
the
the
small
morning.
wins. Yeah. Okay. But you know what? I'm going to be so controversial here. Are you ready? I'm
Yeah.
about to blow your world. I literally wrote down, because I listened to your interview with Tara, and I was like, I don't make my bed. I am a type A that does not make my bed. And I have my reasons. Like, but I hope I didn't let you down, Mike.
Oh no. No, maybe you let Sarah down.
I might have let Sarah down. You know what it is? It's that because I'm kind of like trying to not be a perfectionist, it's my nature. It's this like actual act of like allowing something to just be and be okay with it. And I like big, fluffy, like comforters. So to me, it's like, nah, just let it like feel cozy. But Lauren, my best friend, if the sheets aren't tucked like hotel tight, I mean, it's not a good day. So we're just, we're opposites in that, but I do believe in small wins like you guys were talking about. I think that's 100%, but the bed just isn't that big of a deal to me.
Well, full disclosure, my version of making the bed is taking that big fluffy comforter and just
Okay, that's my husband's version too.
yeah. So maybe I was a little misleading in that remark that I made.
No, I love it. I was listening to that and I thought, oh no, I'm not going to be part of this club because I do not make the bed.
But I mean, the overarching message there is really important. Those little things that you can do,
Yeah.
just any little thing that sort of primes your pump, so to speak, for the day.
Yes.
It's important, and doing it over a very long bit of time, and sort of honing the art of discipline, right? It's
Oh
just
yeah.
something that it helps.
Yeah,
It truly helps.
absolutely.
Well, I want to kind of draw us to a close here. I think we could
Okay.
just talk
I know
all
we could.
and I'd love to have you back for a round two at some
That would
point. I
be
think that
so fun.
let's do that. But anything you want to leave our viewers, our listeners with today?
Yeah, I think to me, it's like, just because you're one property manager or you're one leasing agent, you have a lot of power. You can change the energy in your community. You can change the energy in your team. To encourage means to give somebody courage, and we all sometimes need to be given courage. And I think it's just, instead of over and over talking about how hard things are, how rude the residents are, I would love for us to change the narrative and say, well, what one person can I be really sweet to today? How can I make somebody feel really good? And I feel that will kind of start to trickle, and we'll feel that. And so, from a marketing perspective, marketing sometimes to people feels hoaxy or gimmicky. I feel the best marketing is sincere marketing. And I feel that each person is the best marketing. So show up as the best version of yourself, and we get knocked down, but like pick yourself back up. And I don't know, I just think this industry, you have the ability to impact a lot of people. I have a lot of empathy and a lot of just love for this industry. And I think, if nobody's giving you credit, give yourself credit, because you're doing an awesome job.
Oh, wise words, wise words. Rewind that and listen to that multiple times.
Oh,
I really appreciate your time today. This has been an absolute pleasure. I definitely want to get around to it at some point, but before we sign off completely, where can people find you
yeah,
online?
so I think Instagram is where my personality comes off the most. I'm at Sprout Marketing is my handle. You can also be a part of my email list, and people are surprised, but I write every single email that goes out to our prospects and our members. So try sproutfree.com. And a lot of it is like marketing related, but a lot of it is just hacks and tips to make your job easier. And then I'm on LinkedIn as Barbara Savona. And yeah, so I think those places, LinkedIn, Instagram, and then our email list at trysproutfree.com.
Excellent. There you have it. Go connect with Barbara. She's
Please,
awesome.
please do. I'd love to meet more people in our world.
Excellent. Until next time, thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Mike.